Hello and welcome back to another edition of GNAT-TV's In-Depth Series. I'm Andrew McKeever. Today is Monday, January 12th, and today we're launching a special three-part series. We're calling them legislative previews, for lack of anything more creative to think about. But over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having in our state representatives and state senators from the northern half of Bennington County to give us the update on what's going on in Montpelier and what they're anticipating happening as we go forward. State House just returned to business last week on January 6th and heard from the governor his State of the State message. And so we are off. So we're really pleased to have, as the first installment of this three-part series, the two state representatives from the Bennington 4 district. That includes the towns of Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and part of Sunderland. So here with us today are State Representatives Rob Hunter and Kathleen James. Next week, we're looking forward to having with us the state representatives Chris Morrow, Dave Durfee, and Sandy Pincinel. And after that, we'll have state senators Seth Bongartz and Rob Plunkett in. So we'll get the complete picture of, by the time we're done, we'll know everything that's going on and what's going to happen. At least that's the idea anyway.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, huh? All right, well, great.
General
Anyway,
merriment ensues. Yeah.
Anyway, we're grateful today to have with us today State Representatives Kathleen James and Rob Hunter to get us started with all of this. Thank you both very much for making the time for this conversation. Well, I guess 2026 is going to be an interesting year. I guess they all are at some level or another, but this one seems in particular to be filled with some interesting legislative questions that the two of you will get to grapple with. And I was thinking the way to start the conversation today was just simply say, so what do you think what are some of the big issues you're anticipating? But we already know what several of them are, and we know what probably the most the one that you're going to probably be tackling with earliest, and that, of course, is the whole education question, reform of governance and finances of how the state does education. There was a task force that was formed as a result of the passage of Act 73, the education reform bill that, after a long grinding process, was signed by the governor last year. That commission was expected to come up with a couple of maps about possible ways of dividing the state into different education districts, but instead it came back with a recommendation for voluntary mergers and also maybe some other measures that didn't require the state to be carved up into 5 or 6 districts, down from the 50 or so supervisory unions we have now, and 119 school districts, something like that. Yep. Anyway, let me stop there. And Rob Hunter, you're a member of the Education Committee in the House, so let me start with you. What is your sense on where things stand as the session begins and Act 73 is now going to be revised, tweaked a little bit, or what can we expect?
It's a great question, and I don't think that my answer will do it any honor, but I will say this, and this is really just sort of a new guy coming in, and having this last year under my belt, and then I read I mean, honestly, I was hoping to see maps. I was hoping that our first committee week would be saying, look at these, we need to consider these, and we need to have testimony, and we're going to talk about these different configurations and what you leave in and what gets left out and yada, 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 all of that. But instead, we get the commission and the commission report, which, after I read it, and I'm sure you felt the same, and I know that Kathleen did, and I don't want to speak for you, you go, oh, well, that's all pretty reasonable. Sure, cooperative service agreements, voluntary mergers, in the future, regional high schools. I thought these are reasonable, intelligent ideas and reasonably intelligent people who put this together. And I thought, well, this could be a path forward. The governor gave his State of the State and said, no. He said, no, this is not what I signed. This is not the law. they were supposed to come up with maps, yada, yada, yada. And I found myself sitting there going, well, yeah, he's not wrong. I mean, I voted for this. And so I want to say I'm a little bit wishy-washy. I don't want to say that any wind can blow me, but then I think, well, yeah, I guess, well, yeah, we need to strive for equity, and we need to strive for, giving schools the resources that they need, and so on and so forth. And my week ended Friday afternoon with testimony from Zoe Saunders, the education secretary, and she really kind of debunked quite a bit of what we had heard or come to believe. She talked about all of the data that she provided. She said, maybe you've heard otherwise, but this was given. We've got this mapping tool that they had at their disposal. Maps were made. My office volunteered to help out with these things. And so, okay, so at the end of week one, Rob Hunter's brain is a little bit like scrambled eggs, not cooked yet, and wondering which way we're going to go. And I'm not throwing my committee chair under the bus here or anything, but I did ask kind of early on, like, okay, so how are we gonna move forward? And I'm not sure that he knows. And as he has said to me, leadership has not given him any indication of what they want. So if you're now confused about how we're going to go forward, then you can join the club. But I know that we're already talking to the Principals Association. We're already talking to the state board. So, it's been a full week of already hearing testimony and getting people's responses to the commission report, as well as their feelings in general about Act 73. And I want to say that Jay Nichols said they don't necessarily, there's this overwhelming feeling that people are not into forced mergers and forced consolidations. And this, I get that feeling that there's just this sense out there that here's one thing that Vermonters do not want, right?
Yeah.
But then, of course, the governor speaks.
Yeah.
And he says, we have to have this.
Or I won't sign the budget.
Well,
Right. So, yes, go ahead. Jump in.
yeah, I think Governor Scott's wrong. And I think that the task force, and for those who don't know, not everybody's all, up to speed on this stuff, but I voted no on Act 73 and still feel great about that vote because regardless of what Secretary Saunders says, the state of Vermont does not have data to prove that forced mergers and that Act 46 saved us money. And when the redistricting task force did its work this summer and fall, they heard from more than 5,000 Vermonters. They conducted hearings all over the state. They did quite a bit of research, and they came up with a way forward that is reasonable and that does make sense. So Rob mentioned this, but to folks out in listening land who don't know the details, what the task force proposed, instead of forced school district consolidation and mergers down to a dozen districts, they propose instead that our existing districts could join one of 5 cooperative educational service areas. We always have a lot of acronyms in the legislature. And these would basically be cost-sharing agreements so that districts could band together in 5 regions around the state and start saving money now by negotiating and purchasing things at better prices like transportation, the cost of student testing. So that's a cost-saving measure that we could put in place right now that would show immediate results. They also recommended that instead of forced mergers that are laid out in Act 73, that we support voluntary mergers by districts where it makes sense, when it's a strategic good move for the district and local folks support it. And the carrot we could use for that would be state construction aid. So if you agree to go from 6 or 7 little districts down to one, and that's a choice that you make locally, then you'll qualify to get some help, some financial help when you go to build a new school or renovate a school. So these things make sense to me. I think it's a path that's supported by a lot more Vermonters than the forced merger route that is laid out in Act 73. And, you know, if Governor Scott wants to threaten the legislature by saying that he won't sign the budget or he won't sign a bill that doesn't adhere strictly to the path laid out in Act 73, that's his prerogative as governor. But I think it's short-sighted, and I think it's political gamesmanship. And so I was not impressed with that approach. I think there's a lot of support in the legislature for the middle way that the task force laid out. And Rob is right, you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, the House Education Committee is going to start taking testimony. They're under a lot of pressure now from Governor Scott to revert to the original outlines of, you know, Act 73 and come up with a map that shows 12, you know, say 12 district lines. But, you know, there's not a consensus across the House or the Senate that that's the way to go. So, you know, you've got House leadership saying that all ideas are on the table, that nothing's been decided yet. We're going to start taking testimony and see how it winds up. And I think Governor Scott felt like the conversation was slipping away from him and felt like he had to bring the hammer down and whatever.
So one of the aspects of Act 73 that would have been a big change for the state is the foundation formula, as it's referred to. It's a formula, I guess, that's used in most other states around the country. Vermont has not. That would be where schools would get a fixed amount of money per student, you know, with, of course, some accommodations for weighted students, for students who English is a second language, that sort of thing. But basically, there would be a fixed amount of money per student that would come to each school based on their student population. So I guess I'm just wondering, where does that stand? I mean, if Act 73 is sort of on hold pending a resolution around, are we going to have maps or not have maps, can the foundation formula still get put in place? Or does that mean that you have to amend Act 73 in some way? Or where does that, because I think it's the financial side of all of this. It's also a factor with
huge driver.
The property tax situation, which we can explore in a moment. But could the foundation formula still happen, or is that on hold until the big picture is settled?
Well, we set up, you know, it's right now we can only move to a foundation formula, which I think is a great, you know, it's a very promising approach, I think, to overhauling our education funding system. I think it would help bend the cost curve and make things a lot more transparent and easy to understand. Right now, we can't get to a foundation formula because that's how we set it up in Act 73. It's like, first this, and if we do this, then we do that, and then if that happens, then this happens. But there's nothing to say, not that this would be easy, but you know, there's nothing to say that we couldn't amend Act 73 to move to a foundation formula without passing through those gates. You know, Governor Scott certainly would not, as we've heard, support that approach. But technically, the only reason we can't move to a foundation formula is because that's how we set it up in the bill. That could be changed. I do know, and have certainly heard the governor's team say, and this may have some legitimacy, that the foundation formula works better across larger districts, and that may be true. And I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't move to larger districts. I support that. I think everybody supports that. It's how we get there. And as you know, I was not a big fan of how Act 73 set it up to get there, but we do need to get there. And I think we need to get to a foundation formula as well.
So, Rob, maybe back to you on this one. The other big factor in play, particularly for our area around here, is how do independent schools fit into all of this?
Well,
a lot of Sturm und Drang around that one last year, and do independent schools feel like Oh, okay. Well, we're going to navigate our way through this all right, or we're
Well,
still in a questionable area?
many of them got cut out simply because of the parameters set forth in Act 73 for funding. You know, you had to have a certain percentage of your students had to be from this town, and so on and so forth. And if you didn't meet those parameters, then you weren't going to get funding. And I think that it knocked down the number to 18 independent schools.
From 50, 40 or 50 something to
Yeah,
18 remaining.
yeah. So kind of a big deal there that many people, many of these little schools lost their funding. You know, I think that many of the independent schools are going to be okay. I mean, I can't say that with all certainty. I feel like the 4 historical academies will be fine in the end because, you know, like we take Burton, for example. I mean, Burton has been serving the public students here in town for almost 200 years. This is the public high school, you know, and I know that, I don't know, I mean, having taught there for almost 30 years, this is who we are. We get all of the kids from our towns. They don't fill out applications. They simply show up and they're our students. And so my mission, of course, is to make sure that that remains that way going forward. You know, I would like to say this, and I part of, I think, where we run into problems is that there's a perception out there, and it becomes a haves, have-not for many people. Burton's the rich school. Burton has all this stuff. Burton is private. Even in the Digger, we see the interchangeable use of independent and private, and this drives me a little bit crazy because private says you fill out an application. Not everybody gets to go there because maybe we don't meet your needs. Burton is a public school that meets everybody's needs, that has embraced MTSS, that embraces everything that the state says we must do.
So anyone who wants to attend Burton, it's an
you're,
open door.
If you're living in our sending towns, you know, traditionally it's Manchester, Dorset, the mountain towns, 10 mountain towns this way. You know, and there's a funny story from, it was my first year there, 1996, 1997. And I was talking over lunch with Phil Anton, then, you remember him, the head of guidance. And he said, well, this is my roadshow week, Rob. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm going to go out and beat the bushes. He says, some of the kids in our sending towns have choice, and we are not the school of choice. Full stop on that. So he would travel over to the mountain schools and bring his dog and pony show and talk about how great Burton was. Within a year, because I've tried to go back in my mind and kind of time this out, when did we become the school of choice? And I've gone back to Bob Smith's gift of $3 million and then Jerry Levin's $1 million plus, and they built the Smith Center. At that point, things started rapidly changing at Burton. And right about the time your kids were there, and it started growing. And things just started, good things started happening for Burton, and we really turned a corner. And I think where Londonderry kids 20 years ago or 30 years ago might have said, you know what, I'm going to go to Leland and Gray because my older brother went there and my friends are going there. But then suddenly we started, the gravitational force got a lot stronger in Manchester, and people started moving here because of this amazing school. And that has just fed its own success. So there was a corner that got turned somewhere in the late 90s and the early 2000s, and Burton hasn't looked back. When I got there, there were about 420 students. Today, it's close to 800.
Well, before we leave the whole education question.
Sorry, that was a long answer and maybe the wrong answer to your question. I don't know.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
This is important stuff. But I guess I just wanted to get back for a second to the foundation formula.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if the foundation formula is set at, let's say, $17,000, $18,000 per student, and Burton's tuition is $23,000? Does that mean Burton somehow has to come up with $5,000 or $6,000 per student to fill the void?
This is a great question.
Or how does that?
This is
how
a
does that
great
work?
question, and you can go ahead if you want.
Sure. I
have-
mean, I guess the one iteration of the foundation formula that we have that gets kicked around a little bit is that towns might have the ability, or districts might have the ability to vote a little bit extra, as long as local voters approve that. And then the impact of that right now, you know, if we vote a big budget and our voters approve that, the costs of all of our budgets get kind of shared across the whole state. Everybody winds up paying for that. One possibility would be that if we go to a foundation formula in the future, that districts might have the ability to spend a little bit more. Voters would approve that, and then that tax impact, that extra tax impact would only be reflected locally. So that's one possibility. The idea, of course, you know, is that the foundation formula would be set so that it accurately reflects the cost of educating your student body. So in the perfect world, you know, the money that we would be allocated through the foundation formula would be the money that we need. What I don't know would happen, you mentioned Burn-Burton, which is kind of interesting. I mean, you know, as an independent school, would BBA still retain the ability to raise private dollars for, say, building the Smith Center? And I assume so, but you know, we're a long way from getting there. I mean, anytime Burn-Burton raises private dollars to expand its own campus, that's saving taxpayers money. That's money that local taxpayers are not spending.
Exactly.
But, you know, if we move to the foundation formula, there is no doubt that districts that right now are under-resourced, you know, that their taxpayers simply cannot approve or pay enough money to educate their kiddos, they're going to get more money. So, you know, Arlington would benefit from a foundation formula, Bennington, SVSU, a lot of our lower income rural communities they'd wind up getting more money without feeling a big tax hit. Higher spending districts that are accustomed to spending a lot more, yeah, they might have to, you know, they'd be looking at some budget cuts probably, or the ability for local folks to spend more if they want to.
Yeah.
Well, lots of questions.
Yeah.
And,
I want to just add one thing, and I think
Sure.
that this is a little bit of a glitch in the foundation formula, because I am all for places like Barry getting more money. They need more money. They simply don't have enough.
Yeah.
But I also think that a school like CVU or Burn-Burton shouldn't have to lose millions of dollars, and they stand to. So that is a thing.
You know what's interesting,
And they
though,
work. Those schools are working, right?
is that if you look at the numbers, you know, Burn-Burton's not spending a lot more than the state average.
No,
you know,
may not even be
yeah, or
spending the state average.
Burn-Burton is not one of the notoriously high spending districts. In fact, I think, I mean, the highest spending district in the state is Norwich by a decent long shot. It's certainly not Burn-Burton. It's not Taconic and Green.
No.
And if you look at, Rob was talking about some of the misconceptions that are out there, I think, around independent schools. And one of the misconceptions is that towns that tuition are paying more. So, you know, if you have a district that operates K through 12, that their per pupil spending is X, and there's this misconception that towns like ours that maybe operate a public school K through 8, but then tuition out to independent schools 9 through 12, are somehow big spenders, or that's costing more, and it is not. And so there are a lot of things that, a lot of myths, I think, that we need to keep trying to bust in Montpelier. And one of them is that independent schools that receive public tuition dollars are somehow breaking the bank, and they're not.
well, okay. Well, We could talk about education for
We
We
could.
could.
another half
And
an
we can-
hour, I
we
think.
can get
And
off
we
this.
have.
We can
Yeah.
get off this ride. We can get off this ride.
So let me transition slightly off of that to something that's kind of related to that, and that's the question of property taxes, or
Yeah.
how, you know, I mean, I realize property taxes, education go hand in hand and all that, but I guess has there been any conversation amongst your colleagues that you've heard so far or been involved with that says, well, whatever it is we wind up doing about education, we also have to figure out a way to, you know, reduce pressure on property taxes? Or is that the foundation formula? Is that the idea behind that? Is that will by itself lower school spending enough so that property taxes will start to drift downward a little bit? Because they've gone
Or
up,
at
what, I think
least-
40% in
Yeah.
the last 5 years, and of
Well-
course, 2 years ago, that was the cause of a lot of agitation
Yeah.
among
So
voters.
there's the long run and the now. So in the long run, moving to a foundation formula, trying to get a handle on the cost of healthcare, which is a problem that impacts all of us and far beyond just our education system. But healthcare is a huge driver of school budgets and something that school boards can't do anything about, really. So if we can continue our work on healthcare across all sectors, but also in education, to try to bring down the cost of healthcare, move to a foundation formula. There are things we need to do long run, right? But in the short term, we've got 2 ideas on the table this year. One I think is a really not a great idea, and one is more like, The not great idea is to freeze property taxes. We've got a bill that would freeze property tax rates. I think that's not a great idea because it doesn't do anything to control the cost of education spending. And we're still going to have to fund everybody's budget. It just means we're going to have to start siphoning money away from the general fund in a year when we're worried about helping
Federal
people
cuts.
heat their homes
Yep.
through LIHEAP and funding SNAP and funding mental health and, you know, funding all the other work we do. And so just draining money away from other important buckets of money doesn't seem like a good idea. And then Senator Baruth has this idea of freezing education spending. So you say, you know, whatever your budget was last year, you can only go up 3% this next year. And I don't know what's going to happen to that idea. When I heard it, I didn't immediately think, no way. I thought, oh, that's going to be an interesting conversation. Originally, he said it should start this year,
Right.
which would have
That's
had
what I
school
heard.
districts all around the state ripping up their budgets that they're
Right.
just about to send to voters.
Right.
His idea now is that it would start next year.
627.
So I don't know what'll happen to
But
that
but again, in the-
idea. It concerns me.
Right, and one of the problems is that, well, if they go up 3%, but healthcare goes up 12, and then
You're firing teachers
your
and cutting
cost
programs.
of, your special education is marching on, and boy, that's, boy, isn't it just a quagmire?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's like if you have,
I mean, like,
if
sure,
you have all these fixed building blocks that you can't cut, what do
right.
you wind up cutting?
So what do you wind up cutting? People and programs.
Teachers, people
People,
and programs.
yeah.
Well, let's pivot over to the healthcare then a little bit. This past year or so, there's been a lot of concern about Vermont Blue Cross Blue Shield running into financial difficulties. Hospitals around the state struggling a bit. I think the Brattleboro Hospital is one of them. Other hospitals, particularly in rural areas, are cutting back services. You have had a lot of controversy around the UVM Medical Center, spending a lot of money that I guess some of your colleagues are going, that sounds like a little bit more than they should be. Where are we at with healthcare and health insurance? Is there going to be any kind of measures you think advanced to try and stabilize the situation, or can it be stabilized at this point? Is it just or factors beyond the state also in play here, with federal revenues being also a bit of a question mark?
Right.
I mean, well, like a lot of us, I'm on the exchange, so ouch. My healthcare costs went up significantly this year. It's it's a problem for so many Vermonters. We did pass some bills. Healthcare is notoriously difficult to kind of control healthcare spending as a state legislature, because so much of it is impacted by federal regulations and what's playing out nationally. But we did, last year was one of the first years where we passed a couple of bills that I thought, well, this could really make a difference. I think one area where we can feel a lot of hope is that the Green Mountain Care Board, under its more recent leadership, is really getting more, I want to say aggressive, but that sounds, the Green Mountain Care Board is really getting a lot more active in providing oversight and sending hospital budgets back and taking a hard look at requested insurance rates. And I think that's great work. I think it's really important. We gave them some expanded authority last year to take steps if it looks like one of our main commercial insurers is really in financial trouble. It was Blue Cross Blue Shield. It doesn't say that in the bill. But, we gave Green Mountain Care Board the ability to kind of go back to hospitals and say no. If it looked like Blue Cross Blue Shield was going to basically go belly up, which at one point was, there were rumors floating around. It was kind of scary. But then we passed another bill last year that, and I've lost some of the details since I last wrote about it last spring, but it basically puts a cap on what hospitals can charge for outpatient drugs. It has to be the Medicare rate.
Yes. Oh, right. Well, there was the drugs, but there was the, what do they call it? The pricing.
And then that's different. We're getting there.
Right.
So when you go to take it, the easiest way to describe it is that many hospitals were charging very elevated rates for outpatient drugs that they would administer at the hospital. So the best way to think about that, I think, is like chemo. So, so you're not checked into the hospital, you're going in to get your chemo, to get your treatment. And we put a hard cap on what hospitals could charge for those drugs. That's going to make a big difference. And then what Rob was talking about is that we're on a path to move towards something within a couple of years called reference-based pricing.
That's it.
And as Rob said, it's pegged to Medicaid rates, Medicare. Anyway, it's pegged to either Medicare or Medicaid rates.
Right, that they can't charge beyond what.
Yeah, beyond a percentage of that. Yeah. And our colleagues on the healthcare committee, all power to them. Healthcare policy is so complicated. It is really hard to understand, but we have taken some steps that are going to start to really make a difference, I hope.
Yep.
One of the question on this that kind of intrigued me was, I understand that different hospitals around the state charge very different prices for the same procedures. Like if I went to SVMC in Bennington to get some sort of test, the price I would be charged or my insurance would be charged is different than what it would be if I had the same test in Burlington, let's say, or some other hospital. Is there any way that the state could say, hey, guess what, guys?
That would be the reference.
That would be the
reference-based pricing.
So
you would see much more consistency. And this is a doomsday thing for me. I feel like we're just nibbling at the edges here. Kathleen, I feel like we're at the mercy of these enormous companies, these health companies that they are out for profit. And we are just these little people who are paying our insurance or whatever we do. And I just feel like we're going to keep nibbling, we're going to keep doing our little things. But, honestly, when this country starts taking care of everybody, and we finally do national health care, which will I ever see that in my lifetime? I have no idea. And I don't know what kind of revolution it will take. But I feel like this is a thing. And sorry, I don't mean to be like channeling Bernie right now, but I really feel like this is a thing that this country could do for all the people. and we wouldn't be nibbling at the edges of, you know, and it is horrible
Yeah.
that how much a person has to spend on the exchange or anywhere for fear that something's going to go wrong. Like I knew this chump who fell down the stairs 5 weeks ago. I broke a rib and 3 bones in my back. Thank God I have insurance. Man, I would have walked that one off if I didn't.
Yeah, it's
And I'll tell you what. Yeah, it's where it's in. Sorry, I don't mean to get overly political, but I mean it's a problem.
Well, that's part of the job description.
It's a
right?
problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem in this country.
Yeah, well, it certainly is a problem. It doesn't seem to be getting any better.
No,
But anyway,
no.
again, another subject we could spend the entire program talking about, I'm sure. But let's move on to one other area that has gotten a lot of attention and has gotten a lot of attention for a couple of decades now. At this point, that's the housing question. We keep on hearing that the state is short of housing. We need to build, 30,000 new homes by 2030. I'm probably not getting those numbers exactly correct, but any initiatives do you think the legislature is going to be engaged in trying to incentivize more housing construction or rehabilitation of older housing stock or anything
I think all that's
that
going on.
would chip away at that big number we need to get to by 2030?
well, the CHIP bill that we passed last year was a
Yes.
super big deal.
No pun intended or anything.
Yeah, and I'll explain that for for folks who aren't familiar. But Vermont already has established tax increment financing districts where communities can apply for and set up a TIF, and then it kind of incentivizes development and building in that district, and developers get a property tax break. It's more complicated than that, but so that happens generally, and its TIF districts are big. They're big towns, like St. Albans has a TIF. So this new CHIP plan, the Community Housing Infrastructure Program, just launched like today. And it's going to allow this similar tax incentive, kind of let's get housing going in much, much smaller, for like individual housing projects. And it funds infrastructure. So basically, if you need sewer so that you can build housing on a certain spot, or,
Electric.
Electric.
All it. Yep.
So I think the CHIP program is going to be a real game changer. I can't remember how we arrived at these numbers, but I very much remember during the floor debate hearing that ultimately it could unleash as much as $2 billion worth of housing financing across the state over the 10 years or whatever that we authorized it for. So
It's pretty
I
significant.
think CHIP is really exciting, and St. Albans is already right out of the gate, with an application. They've got a site that was I don't know what it was, a building that they need to clean up the site, and they want to turn it into housing, and here they go, first application already out the gate. So, and it seems like I hope that Manchester is interested in pursuing some CHIP funding. I don't know how
Airport Road will
Yeah, I don't know how that
work
would
out for
interplay
that.
with Airport
I meant to
Road.
get in touch with John and ask about that.
Arlington.
Airport Road is the housing development that may be happening.
That may
out
be
there.
happening.
Maybe
Yes.
happening,
I
but
haven't had an update.
that's just by way of example. So this CHIP program is going to really help, I think, get a lot of housing built all around the state. And then one of my other favorite programs is VHIP. That's the program we keep funding, the Vermont Housing Improvement Project. The acronyms are hard, but anyway, that gives money to property owners to create or renovate or rehab apartments that are like offline. So you've got an apartment that's not up to code, or it needs to be gutted and rebuilt so that it can be rented to Vermonters at an affordable rate. You can get that VHIP money, and then you have to keep the apartment at low affordable rates for 5 to 10 years. Then it goes onto the market.
One of the issues that always seems to come up with housing is that when someone proposes a housing complex, let's say of 20, 30 units, condominiums or whatever, the next door neighbors sometimes aren't always
Not in my
thrilled
backyard.
about that.
Yep.
This is the not in my backyard syndrome. I'm
Yep.
going again.
Yep.
Has there been any talk about how do we get past that? I
Right.
mean, there's been a lot of talk
Not sure.
nationally on this whole subject, I know,
Right.
but you know, how do you get past the and because I can understand how the next door neighbors can go, wait a minute, when I bought this house 20 years ago, that was a nice beautiful field over
I
there.
could see the
Why
mountains.
should
right.
it be anything different? And that their net worth as individuals and as families is a lot of that's tied up in the value of their home. So I can understand the concerns. I mean, you see this with solar field projects as well, the same thing. But I guess I just wondered, is there some way that's ever been discussed about how to get around that whole NIMBY factor?
Circumvent that. Yeah, I don't know.
Or is that just seemed as not, given all the other issues in play with housing, that it's just
No,
something
that's
they'll
the
work
thing.
out
I
on
just
the
read-
local level?
I just read about where was it in there was Digger just had an article about that, about actually the developer finally won whatever lawsuits they had that they could go forward. But I think the issue too is that these projects get mired in lawsuits and challenges but I don't know if anything's
Well,
actually been legislated against that.
Well, some of the housing bills we've passed in recent years make it easier to build, duplex. You can build a duplex now where you could previously have built, any place you can put one driveway and put one house, you can put a duplex. And I think that, and this is where I wish Seth were here, because he's been on the committee that's
Right.
done all this work, whether he's in the House or the Senate. But we've passed bills that have encouraged and incentivized and loosened Act 250 and made it easier and easier to put these, to put housing where we want it, right, in our downtowns and developed neighborhoods. So then it becomes, what right do neighbors have to appeal? And I think that's been a centerpiece of our current work on Act 250, to make sure that we have these designated Tier 1 and A regions all across the state, where it's going to be easier to build, harder to appeal. Areas in Tier 2 where things will largely kind of remain the same. And then areas in Tier 3 where you're going to have to go through the areas we need to set aside for, for our forests and for our farmland and stuff, where it'll be really hard to appeal. But that's all the regulatory framework. Like we can do everything we can to make sure that, that two neighbors can't hold up a project for years. But in the end, it just also comes down to like people who are going to be people,
Yep.
And so sometimes the things I think about are, if we've done everything we can to be thoughtful about people's ability to appeal or block a project, to allow it where it's really important, but make sure that folks can't just put roadblock after roadblock
Right.
up.
Right.
Then what? If we've done all that work, and I think we're doing it, then what comes next? And, as silly as it is, I think a lot about the things that would be, for me, make it easier to think about a big development going in across the street from me. I think mixed income, mixed use projects, this is just me, but I think those are cool, right? So I like to think about, well, God, I really liked my empty field, but it'd be neat to live next to a place that has some market rate, some middle income, some affordable housing, so that we get people, maybe of all ages and all incomes mixing in the same building. And maybe there's a community center and a coffee shop there. Like, that sounds, to me, that's interesting. And then I know I don't think I'm alone in this. To me, it really matters how the building looks. And I have seen some really ugly designs that I wouldn't want to see across the street from me, just because I don't want to look at it. And so I really hope that we find ways in the future, maybe using more modular housing or pre-approved designs, where these buildings become actually attractive, kind of cool and attractive to look at. And
That should be easy, right?
I lived across
Yeah.
a field filled with wildflowers, and now it's the Manchester Town Library. So I lost my field filled with wildflowers.
Although it's nice
But
to
I
look
love looking at the
I
library.
was going to
It's
say,
cool.
nice to look at a library. And you get the graveyard.
It's a
If your neck
short
gets
walk to
tired,
their
you can-
events
It's
over there,
exactly what
too.
I was talking about. It's a beautiful building. I don't get my empty space. It blocked my view of the mountains, but it's cool to look at. People are coming and going.
Uh-oh.
You know, I'm seeing folks arrive to all kinds of events, and I got over it pretty quickly. So,
Well, just to kind of sort of wrap up here, again, so many more things out there that could be discussed. But
The
I
folks
just thought-
next week will be able to handle it.
The governor gave his State of the State speech last week, January 6th. What were your reactions to it? I mean, the headline seemed to be, "I'm not signing the budget until you
Right.
deal with Act 73."
Education.
And
Yeah.
of course, we've already talked about that a little bit. But was there anything else in there, or that you thought, that's like dead on arrival, or what a great idea?
did he say anything else?
They pretty much talked about
It was
education.
a single,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
very
it
much
was a single
The single
topic.
topic,
It was a single topic
right.
speech. I think the last time a governor devoted his entire State of the State to a single topic was Shumlin when
The
he
opioid one.
talked about opioids. You know, I already kind of said how I felt about the threat.
Yeah.
It's just not a, you know, it's not a collaborative way to govern. So I was not, I was not jumping up, you know, with a standing ovation.
Because, I mean, last year there was a lot of
Oof.
friction, shall we say, between the governor and
Dems.
House leadership, Senate leadership. I'm sure all sides would love to kind of have a more collaborative kind of approach to the state's problems. It's also an election year, so that might make that a little more difficult.
Right.
Yeah, but I hope not, right? Like in general, everything I just said about, you know, how I feel about Governor Scott's approach to Act 73, that shouldn't undercut the most important fact, and I know Rob will agree with this. By and large, we do govern in a very respectful, collaborative, cooperative way here in Vermont. I mean, you know, we can take our digs at each other, and election years are never fun because that you turn up the volume a little bit. But the day-to-day, day in, day out, working relationship between Republicans and Democrats and the legislature and the administration in Montpelier is really great. And Vermonters should feel good about that. It is nothing
Yes.
like Washington, D.C.
No.
We all get along very well. There's a lot of bipartisan communication, collaboration.
Yep.
That's the reality. You know, despite the occasional dig in the media or the State of the State speech that didn't sit very well with me, that doesn't mean we don't all work together for the good of Vermonters, because we do.
Okay. All right. And lastly, the state budget. The governor will be giving a budget address in, what, a couple
That's
of
gonna
weeks?
happen
I
soon.
think.
Yeah, the 20th?
Do we have a looming budget crisis of some sort?
Whoa,
I mean, I know there's a
yeah.
concern, I'm sure, about the federal money.
Federal money, yep.
A big chunk of the state budget is derived from federal funds. Is this going to be a tough year to find a balance point, or is it just be no harder than any other year?
Oh, it's going to be way harder than other years.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, basically the Appropriations Committee is just telling us, like, no.
Don't
Oh,
vote
you
for
want that?
anything.
No.
No.
Don't spend any money. Okay.
You know that program? Nope.
Nice
So,
idea, but too bad.
Yeah, no, there are going to be some, I'm sure, some very, very, very difficult decisions. You know, we're not going to be able to fund everything we want to fund. We're going to have to balance
Or fund it fully.
urgent priority versus urgent priority. And it's not going to be, a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, these are tough times for sure.
You know, which is why I think I got thorny, you know, when Governor Scott has now already put the budget, you know, in sort of hostage territory. It's going to be a tough year. I don't think we need that kind of brinksmanship.
Right.
Well, okay. Well, let's leave it there for today, but maybe we'll have the two of you back again at some point
Maybe.
before the end of the session.
I'm good for entertainment factors. You
um,
know, that's about it.
And before we go, though, I
That is
just want to
hilarious.
give you both a chance to give us the dates of your upcoming coffee hours. You're back in the
Yeah.
coffee hour business again. You had
Yes.
one, was it last weekend?
Yep.
No, the weekend before ago.
Yeah.
First weekend in January. More to come, right?
Oh, yeah. I think we have 8 more. And the next one is, my mind now went blank, but it's not this coming weekend, which means it must be the next
20-something?
24th. Is that a Saturday? But anyway, the dates for the whole session and the locations are published on my website. So if you just go to whatever my website is, not the General Assembly official page, but like my Kathleen James for staterep.com or whatever, right on the homepage, 2026 coffee hours.
And you have 8 of them all together between now and
9, I think, and 1 down.
until
Plus
between
plus
now
we'll
and
be
May.
at town meeting.
Town meeting.
Okay, well, so
everywhere,
folks
we're
can get
everywhere.
the latest update at those for sure. And again, next week we'll be having Chris Morrow, Sandy Pincino, and Dave Durfee in, state representatives from, okay, let me see. Dave represents Shasbury and the other part of Sunderland that you folks don't.
Yep.
Sandy has Dorset, Danby, Landgrove, Peru, and Mount Tabor.
Yep.
Yeah, am I forgetting one there? No, I think that's it. And then Chris, so this is the hard
Oh
one.
boy,
Is it one
Weston.
Weston?
Windhall, Londonderry, Andover, and Weston.
Wow, that's about right. And actually, they have all the answers, so I'm sure it'll be much more enticing.
So
Speak for yourself.
we'll be looking forward to hearing from them. And then the week after that, State Senators Bongartz and Plunkett will be here to give us the view from the other side of the building, right? Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Down the hall from you guys.
Down the hall.
Yeah.
All right, super. Well, again, thank you both very much, State Representatives Kathleen James and Rob Hunter, giving us the lowdown on what to expect as
Awesome.
Montpelier gets back into gear. All right, thank you all for being with us today. I hope you found the program interesting. I sure did. And well, we'll see you again the next time. All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.